and this faith journey has produced is peace and joy. And so, God, we enter your gates today with thanksgiving. We are thanking you that we are growing up in faith. We are thanking you that we are becoming and beholding and becoming change for the time we have spent in your presence. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. How are you today? I am so happy to see you. It is a pleasure to be with you. My name is Leah Reynolds Jones, and I have the awesome privilege of being the proprietress of a wonderful kingdom enterprise called Legacy Builders, where we help individuals and couples gain necessary tools and skills and I'm going to say it the way I always say it, to leave a lasting legacy, and that includes transcendent wealth. Yep, I like that way better. Anyway, what is transcendent wealth? Well, you have to follow me to find out. You have to keep joining these broadcasts. You have to scroll your fingers, these things, your phalanges. Scroll them across or across the screen of your smart device, and you're going to type in www.legacybuilders.com, and then you're like, what? You went too fast. There, I put it up for you. Legacybuilders.com. You're going to go there and you're going to learn more about us, what we do, and all of those things help you build transcendent wealth. Yep, they sure do. Right? Now, I want you to do something else. I would love it if you subscribe, follow, like, or share this broadcast wherever you're watching it from, or just follow me on social media. Right? The idea is social media, so we engage with one another. I would love it if you would engage in this way by doing one of these 4 things, all of these 4 things, 2 of the 4 things, as many of these things as you are comfortable doing. That is what I would love for you to do. And if you do none of them, I am still grateful for your attention and that you joined us today. So thank you for joining us and welcome to the broadcast. Now, having said all of that, and I think, honest to goodness, guys, that's the fastest I've ever said and gotten through all of that. Yay! What they say, practice makes permanent, right? So excited that I was able to do that, to share those wonderful things with you. It's a pleasure to be with you. And today, we are continuing, guys, from our topic that we started last week. And I realized something. You know what I realized as I was prepping for today? I realized that I had not finished 5783. However, I honestly believe the introduction I gave is what we needed. And then we'll probably, once I finish this series, I'll go back to 5783. If you're watching and you're like, what is 5783? It's the actual Hebrew number for the coming year. Now, in the Hebrew calendar, 5783 started at the beginning of October. So we are already in the new year on the Hebrew calendar. However, if you're following the Gregorian calendar, the calendar that we follow, which says that today is December 7th, 2022, that calendar, then the new year will begin on January 1, and that year that is coming is the year 5783. And there was a whole download that Jesus gave me about Well, it says I'm still alive, guys, and I'm back. So you had a period of blankness and darkness, and I don't know what to tell you. I don't even know what to do with this. We're just gonna keep going. We will not be distracted. So I was telling you what 5783 was, and it's the new year for on the Hebrew calendar that has already started. And I'm telling you that we will go back to 5783 after we finish this current series that we're in, which is lessons from First Kings 19. Having said that, I am go straight into the lesson because literally the entire computer, I'm in my office here, and the entire computer shut down. Like it literally popped up shutting down and then shut down, just turned off. Brown, like I don't even know. But we're gonna go and we're gonna read this Bible, and we're gonna pick up. So if you were following me, if you were watching last night, hear me last night, last Wednesday, say hi. Feel free to wave at me in the comments. But again, we're in book of First Kings, chapter 19. And what's interesting is last week we y'all, I'm still in my office. I'm live from my phone. I don't know what this message today is supposed to be, but apparently it's going to be amazingly powerful. And I refuse. When you hear me say, I absolutely refuse. So y'all are going to go with me on a little tour because you're in my house right now. I need a Bible. I was planning to use my phone, and yes, see, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas, right? But um, here's what happened, guys. My laptop, which is generally where I go live from, it keeps shutting down. When I say shutting down, I mean like all the way down. It's happened twice. That's why I keep getting kicked off. And I'm just no longer like fooling with that thing, but I'm also not going to let it stop me from delivering the message that I believe God wants me to deliver. So we're in First Kings chapter 19, right? And I'm gonna be limited in what I can do. So, but I'm gonna keep going, and when it's over, we're gonna do it. So, Book of First Kings, chapter 19. And last week, just as a quick recap, if I explained to you that how I arrived, why we are reading First Kings chapter 19, and the short version is God gave me a revelation, and then when I reached out, excuse me, to my pastor, the instruction from my pastor was go read First Kings chapter 19. Well, he didn't tell me First Kings chapter 19. What he told me was go read what happened to Elijah after he came down from Carmel. And of course, that is First Kings chapter 19. 18 and 19, right? Because he is at the top of Carmel in 18, And then right around, I think it's verse 38 or so, the fire fell. And then 40 and 41, yeah, and we read all of that. We read 40, 41, all the way to the end, right? So we read all of that, and we talked about last week this idea when we were looking was that Elijah had done this amazing thing, and then this amazing thing had happened. It had manifested. God had done the impossible. And here Elijah finds himself now, and but the amazing thing had happened wasn't so much for Elijah, it was for the people, because the top of Carmel, the mountaintop, was about if God be God, let him be God, and if Baal is God, let him be God. So Carmel, the mountaintop experience, was to expose God to the people. So that big thing that God has done in your life, yes, you benefit from it for being a part of it, but it was about the people so that people could see God in your life. But now here you are on your knees after having right in the same place, because he was in the same place. He was still at the top of the mountain. And after that experience, now he is looking for rain. And he's looking for rain because the rain stopped at his word. And that's why we need to go back to 5783, because in 5783, and I've said this to you in our previous broadcast when we were introducing 5783, this decade, this 2020 decade is the decade of the mouth. It's the Hebrew word pay for 80. And so we are in the decade of the mouth. And when we speak specifically to 83, 83 has to do with agreements and covenants and the things that you have spoken. And so this coming year, more than any other, I was telling you, watch your agreements. And so we have Elijah here. This thing that he spoke, God came into agreement with him, and it hadn't rained for 2.5, almost 3 years. So some of you are in a position that it's something that you said 2.5, almost 3 years ago. And you are now living in the result of it. And so now you are here on your knees before God trying to undo what you did 2.5, 3 years ago. It hadn't rained. Everything is dry. It's dead. And you go and you kneel down and you pray. And the person who's with you, because this is so close to your heart, your servant is up there with you, and your friend is your person who's walking with you. They're there with you, and you're looking and you're like, all right, we're going to look, and you pray and you ask God to do or undo what you had done before, and it hasn't happened yet. And again, we're just recapping, and it hasn't happened yet. And what happens is the Bible says he did it the first time, and then it says 7 more times. And one of the things we talked about last week was that if he did it the first time, and as verse 43 says, there is nothing at all, 7 times Elijah told him to go back. So he did it, and then 7 times he told him to go back. 7 plus the first time is 8. And so last week I announced to you that we're at number 8. And what is 8? The number of new beginnings, the number of new things, the number of restoration and regeneration. So I'm telling you that even if you've been praying over and over about this same thing, and you've been going back before God, the same thing. Last week, we announced to you that you were at number 8. And so you are at the place now of new beginnings. And this thing that you had spoken into existence, now you will watch God reverse it. And it will happen when? It will happen suddenly. Because in the text, it says that. It says, as soon as dude saw the cloud, he got up, he ran. But by the time they got to the bottom of the hill, what was a small cloud the size of a fist out over the water had become big, dark, ominous clouds. And it was a downpour. And it happened quickly, out of no way. But the other thing that we highlighted that was so crucial was that with that downpour of rain comes acceleration. Godly acceleration, because Elijah under the auspices of that downpour, under the auspices of what happened at Carmel and then the rain coming, it says he got a wind from God. He got a spike of power and he outran Ahab's horses and chariots. So people who started long before you with better vehicles to get where they're going, you by yourself, flat footed in the power of God, are going to accomplish more in less time. That was where we ended last week. That's the high note that we ended on last week. And I believe God has a message for us today, because that's the end of 1 Kings chapter 18 now. And we are in 1 Kings chapter 19. And verse 19 opens with, so Elijah outruns Ahab. Ahab now goes and Ahab tells Jezebel all that Elijah had done, including how Elijah had killed all the prophets. And this is where Jezebel says, so may the gods do to me and add to me if by this time tomorrow I don't make you like each one of them. That's the message that she sent to Elijah. So she's telling Elijah, just the way you killed off all the prophets and all the worshipers of my God Baal, may the gods and everybody do the same thing to me, the queen. Mind you, she's the queen, so she's a person of authority. So this person of authority has spoken and told Elijah, if you don't have the same result as those prophets that you killed, that you embarrassed. And what I want, and this is the next revelation that God gave me from 1 Kings 19. It says, when we get there, verse 3. Verse 2 is the threat. Verse 3 said, and he became afraid. So he got up and ran for his life. And he ran to Beersheba and left his attendant there. And then he went a day's journey into the wilderness. And so the revelation God gave me from that passage of scripture is this. Think about the hugeness of Carmel. We talked about it, and I've done exhaustive studies, I believe, on Carmel, because for a while there last year, we was at Carmel for weeks. Like Carmel was a series. So we fully unpacked what it means, the road leading up. We started with Elijah and the widow. So we unpacked all of that. So we understand how big Carmel is. And last week we did a lot of work unpacking like the idea of the rain coming and having experienced God. We even talk about in my recap just now, this wind of acceleration, this power, this might that God graced Elijah with. And in the middle of all of that, you mean to tell me Elijah didn't have enough confidence in the God who had used him, who had performed through him, that he could be so afraid that he ran for his life? And what did that fear produce? That fear produced two things. And the one thing we're going to discuss today is that fear produced isolation. Because it says it. He got up and ran and then left. He left his companion and ran into the desert by himself. I am here and I'm asking you, what has fear caused you to leave behind? What did you run away from in fear? That's the lesson. So, and you guys know, my husband calls it these chin checks. So where they want to see if you got a glass chin, so they give you a really good punch right here, right? But that was my chin check from God. Like, what has fear caused you to run away from? Despite all the evidence, all the stuff that you've seen God do and experience, somehow this thing from this person of authority got you so fearful that you ran away and isolated yourself. So fear produced isolation. And we know, if we look at just all these Bible stories, it is when a person is in isolation that they are vulnerable. Yes, sometimes God uses isolation in the case of, John the Baptist, in the case of Jesus, even in the case of Moses, where he will take you to this place by yourself so he can give you a revelation. And truthfully, as we continue with the story, we will see that God does just that. But this was not an isolation of God's, I want to say, leading. It was an isolation that was a result of Elijah's fear. It wasn't that God couldn't give him the revelations and the things that he received there. In fact, when God met him by himself, God asked him, "What doest thou here? Why are you here by yourself?" And so I'm here because so many of us, we get the news, we get the word from these people in authority, these people with power, and it causes us to forget, one, who our God is, and two, what he's done in recent history. Because this wasn't no long time ago. This was yesterday. So yesterday you watched God, pay your bills without money. And today you get a call from the bank saying some foolishness, and you're going to forget what God did yesterday? So last semester you passed with flying colors, and this semester and right now you have this test and there's a question, and you're going to forget what God did last semester? The last job you got because God gave it to you, because he put you on the heart of people. And now because they gave you a pink slip, and the last time you were unemployed, God gave you and provided all your needs. Like, you gonna forget all that God has done because of what this person who is quote unquote in authority said? When did their words matter more than God? Just because who's more powerful, them or your God? Like, and it was after this period of acceleration. Like, hear me, Elijah by himself, flat-footed on the ground, outran horses and chariots, and Ahab is king. So think of the type of chariot that he had. He had the best, fastest, strongest, flashiest. I'm telling you, chariot out there, that chariot was fast, and Elijah outran them, flat-footed on the ground, gets there, and then Ahab tells his wife, this message gets to him, and the message caused him to totally forget. How short-sighted are we? And do we know God as well as we think we did? Because, like, and I'm trying not to jump ahead, because but I will say, like, because it and I'm not, hear me, I'm not, what's the word, chastising you. I am not I'm not chastising you. I'm not calling you out or any such thing, because again, these were my lessons. This is how God came for me in my season. This was maybe a month ago now, where I was sitting there, and again, and just in case you hadn't watched last broadcast, where I'm telling you, I was sitting there, and I feel like I can see clearer now the picture of my future than ever before, and I'm there worrying, well, God, am I enough? Am I seeing enough? And I'm questioning myself. And God's response to me is, have you forgotten what I did yesterday or last week or the last time? Like, look where, for me, and this is personal to me, I'm in my own house, in my own office that God gave me. And now, because My bank account looks strange, and I'm just picking a thing at this point, now because the numbers no longer make sense, and these people or I'm launching my I'm still in business, guys, and I'm offering new services upcoming on December 18th. Hear me, on December 18th, I'm doing something I've never done. I'm doing my first webinar, and my first webinar is about self-publishing, something I've done several times, something I knew a lot about because of my time in the legal field. And so I was confident to self-publish for myself. I knew all the steps that I needed to do. And then I did those things. And I have successfully, at this point, self-published 3 books, with writing 2 additional. So very shortly, I'll have self-published 5 books with global distribution. Right. And so I'm doing this webinar, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, well, and God's like, have you forgotten what I've done? Just because, they say this ain't the way it works. It hasn't worked for anybody else. And so what? How big is your God? And more than that, what did you allow the faith to convince you to do? What did you stop doing? Who did you leave behind? What task did you stop? Like, you stopped writing the book because they said what? You didn't apply for the job because why? You didn't put in your offer because they said, everybody else was offering more. It's a seller's market. Like, pick your reason. What did you stop doing? What has faith caused you to leave behind? And then how have you ended up isolated? Because it's not just that he left, dude. He ended up in the wilderness by himself. In the wilderness. So you left all that God has done. You left Carmel. You left the mountaintop, and you allowed people and circumstances and your feelings to lead you into the wilderness. How is it that we leave from Carmel and we end up in wildernesses? We leave the mountaintops, and it's like expeditiously. We have these amazing experiences with God, and God is using us in mighty ways, and we're showing the world our God and his awesomeness. And then God comes and he does a personal miracle at our word, because the rain stopped at Elijah's word and it fell again at Elijah's word. And then God gives you this period of acceleration, and you do amazing things. And at the first sign of adversity from some, and here's the thing, she wasn't even in his face. She sent a messenger. So you get some random message from ace boy, ace girl, from whoever, from wherever, and it robs you of your Carmel experience and drives you into the wilderness. How's way? How's way? How's way, guys? I just want you to examine where you are. I just want you to examine where you are. How did you get here? That was God's question. That was God's question to Elijah when he eventually got to the cave. Because, and hear me, and this is just a foreshadowing of where we're going next. Because yes, we're going to see in the coming verses that God does several miraculous, powerful things in Elijah's story. But hear me, it's not like Elijah left the wilderness and went back to Carmel. No, he left the wilderness and went to the cave. I just want to run around here. And this is how Jesus got me, right? Because and this is why I believe we're alive today. Because the reality is, you may be in the wilderness at this present moment. You've received your message from Jezebel. You've received it. and you've already isolated yourself and got yourself here in this wilderness, and you sitting by this brook and you sad or whatever, and I won't and you can go ahead and read ahead and you'll see what God does. But hear me, after this, God's going to do something powerful with you in the wilderness, and we'll unpack that thing next week. Right? So next Wednesday, join me as we do part 3 of Lessons from the Cave. Not Lessons from the Cave, but Lessons from 1 King 19. And we're going to unpack what God did with him in the wilderness. So we're going to unpack that. But understand what's at stake in front of you today is God's going to do something amazing. Will that thing lead you to the cave, or will it lead you back to where you were supposed to be, out there serving God and being his representative among the people? Because at the end of the day, in the middle of all of this, Elijah had been called by God to be prophet. You have been called by God to do something amazing and important. He has given you spiritual gifts. He has given you his very Holy Spirit to live within you. You've been called by God to do something amazing wherever it is, and you know it. That's why you were at Carmel. That's why the things happen at your word. All of that. And at the end of the day, you still ended up in the wilderness. Today, I just want to encourage you. I truly want to encourage you. Don't go to the cave if you don't have to. But more than that, take stock of where you are. Take stock of where you are. And remember who your God is and how powerful he is. And get back to work. Get back to work. Go find your servant. Go find your partner. Go your business partner. Go find your companion, the person who's been. Go find whatever you fear caused you to leave, and go finish what you started. That's the message today. This is not the time to quit. This is the time to press in. With that, I'm going to leave you alone. I'm not going to delay this. Generally I would have stayed longer, but I feel like it's time well spent. I think I've said all that I would needed to say. David, I see your comments. I am happy that, I pushed through, because even if you're the only one who needed to hear it, I'm happy that you got what you needed today, guys, because there was a whole bunch of technical difficulties, all kinds of stuff going on. But what I knew was God had given me this message and I needed to be obedient. And so I'm just encouraging you, charging you, telling you, be obedient, guys. Be obedient. And here's a freebie that I'm going to throw in. The response of the person does not predicate or is not a measure of your obedience. So God tell you, do such a thing, and it flopped. It doesn't matter if it flopped or not. What mattered was, did you do what God told you? Submit the proposal. You didn't win the contract. Doesn't matter if you did or not. God told you submit the contract. You don't know what he's going to use that to do. All your job is obedience. You don't control the result of your obedience. God does. And it's an exercise in trusting him. And if you want to talk about trusting, excuse me, another series I did, the Choice Trust Continuum. Go back and look at that one, because that was straight fire. But I bid you a good day, a good afternoon. And as I always say, I pray that the latter half of your day is greater than the beginning. Bye-bye. And thank you so much for joining me for today's edition of Midday Manna. Bye. What our trust and this faith journey has produced
is peace and joy. And so, God, we enter your gates today with thanksgiving. We are thanking you that we are growing up in faith. We are thanking you that we are becoming and beholding and becoming changed for the time we have spent in your presence.